Willkommen zum Live-Publikumsgespräch zu Rose la Rose und direkt nach der Uraufführung. Welcome to the public talk about the production Rose la Rose. Before I switch into English again, I will tell you a little bit technical facts in German for our German-speaking audience members, and then I will translate it into English again. Das Publikumsgespräch findet auf Englisch statt. Es wird circa 45 Minuten dauern, inklusive der Fragen an die KünstlerInnen. Das Gespräch findet auf Zoom statt und wird parallel auf YouTube und Facebook live gestreamt. Sie können Ihre Fragen in circa 20 Minuten auf Englisch und auf Deutsch stellen. Auf Zoom gibt es folgende Möglichkeiten. Entweder schriftlich über die Chatfunktion oder mündlich. Dann heben Sie bitte Ihre digitale Hand. Für die ZuschauerInnen auf Facebook und auf YouTube: Sie können Ihre Fragen auf Englisch und auf Deutsch stellen, und zwar per SMS oder per WhatsApp an die Telefonnummer 0177 690 4295. Sie finden die Telefonnummer auch im Beschreibungstext des Videos auf YouTube oder auf der Kampnagel-Webseite, und die Nummer wird auch eingeblendet. Das Gespräch bleibt für 12 Monate online, sodass Sie später es auch nachhören können. Und jetzt wechsle ich wieder ins Englische. Before starting the audience talk about Rose la Rose, here's some technical information. The talk is held in English and lasts for about 45 minutes with a Q&A included. The talk is streamed live on YouTube and on Facebook and will be available on both platforms for 12 months. You can ask your questions in about 20 minutes in English and in German. For those of you who will be in the Zoom conference room, you can write your questions in the chat, or you can raise your digital hand to ask directly your questions. For Facebook and YouTube users, you can ask your questions in English or in German via SMS or WhatsApp by sending it to the German phone number 0049 177 690. Oops, now the number is gone. 4295. You can find the phone number in the description text of the video on YouTube, on the Kampnagel website, or on the screen. I am Melanie Zimmermann, dance dramaturge at Kampnagel, and together with Alina Buchberger, the co-curator of the festival Focus Tanz Dancing Screen. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a white person with a black shirt in front of a digital background in green and red colors. Before we start our conversation, I'd like to welcome and introduce shortly our guests in alphabetic order. Amelia Lander-Cavallo is an American-born queer blind performer, theater practitioner, academic, and workshop facilitator, whose performance practice is multidisciplinary, spanning mediums such as aerial circus, drag, and burlesque. They have performed with disability-led theater companies such as Extend or the famous Grey A Theater company, and have co-founded the theater company Quiplash, which makes space for disabled people across the LGBTQIA+ spectrum. They are also in the final stage of the PhD, which focuses on intersections of gender, disability, and sexuality. Amelia, welcome to our public talk.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Carolin Jüngst is a freelance performer, dancer, and choreographer. She trained in acrobatics on horseback, studied theater dance studies and philosophy, and graduated with a Master of Performance Studies here in Hamburg with a fantastic work with Lisa Rykena. Since back then, they create pieces together here at Kampnagel. Caro, welcome to our public talk.
Hello.
Lisa Rykena studied classical contemporary dance in Frankfurt. She works as a freelance dancer, performer, and choreographer in Hamburg and Berlin. And beside her own work with Carolin, she collaborates regularly with the Berlin-based choreographer Christoph Winkler. Welcome, Lisa. And last but not least, a warm welcome to Ursina Tossi too, who's a freelance choreographer and dancer. She combines current political issues with intensive physical through dance, visual media, and sound. From a feminist perspective, she brings bodily boundaries and concepts related to gender, animality, and technology. She studied contemporary dance, philosophy, and political science and completed her master choreography in Arnhem. Since 2017, she regularly produces works also at Kampnagel, such as Bare Bodies, Blue Moon, Witches, and lately in December, Revenants. Congratulations to all of you for this fantastic, great premiere tonight. What is really special about your work, Ursina, Carolin, and Lisa, is that you are a very strong movement and dance researcher from a queer perspective, a queer feminist perspective that influence a lot your artistic practice. Last year, Carolin and Ursina's work got also deepened through the method of audio description in dance, which offers a new relationship between language and movement. Together, you got funded for a research project now about exactly this relationship. You offered a workshop now last weekend about audio description run by Sophia Neises with an enormous success. There were more than 25 people on the waiting list, but there will be more to come. You have to know in general that audio description in dance is still not very present in the dance scene, but we are all working on it together. Ursina and Carolin, and Lisa knew each other from before, but for Rose La Rose, you worked the first time together with Amelia. I would like to start with Amelia and with a question. Do you remember the first contact about the show, and tell us a little bit what was interesting to you to the point that you decided to be part of this project?
Yeah, so I met Carolin and Lisa at a conference in Zurich, and I think probably what clinched it is I performed a burlesque piece. They saw my butt and thought, great, let's put them in a show. So the reason I think the reason that they reached out to me was that my burlesque piece explores movement and audio description. So it explores this exact relationship that they're focusing on and interested in. So I developed that piece with a company called Extant that is led by blind and visually impaired people. And we were exploring feminism and the kind of assigned female at birth body and audio description and what that does to the male gaze and all sorts of stuff. And it just, from what I understood, it sort of ticked a lot of boxes for what they were looking to explore, which was very exciting and is something that I'm really interested in because a lot of my practice has audio description integrated into it just by the nature of me needing it as an access tool for myself, but also me wanting to include blind and visually impaired people in the audiences that I attract. So they saw this performance in Zurich, and then not long afterwards actually sent me an email saying, hey, we have this show, would you like to be a part of it? And then of course the world caught on fire, and so the original plans got scrapped, and then the secondary plans got scrapped, and then the third type of plans got scrapped. And then we went through many different versions of how we were going to do it and ended up with this amazing film that has been made that I feel very proud of and very excited to have been a part of.
Yeah, I'd like to start also a little bit with the film because it's also in the context, presented also in the context of our festival Dancing Screen. Carolin, perhaps you can tell us a little bit, so you described it already, the situation, the COVID situation. Could you a little bit explain more how you, what were the circumstances of producing it? And especially in the context of the festival, I'd like to know if your decision of finding a hybrid film stage form, was it also influenced by former or older video dances? Because, for example, yesterday we heard Dr. Claudia Rosini talking about a film, Animated Picture Studios from 1903, which was exactly also, which showed also the relationship, as you did also now in the film, where the cameraman was also shown. It was in this film, but also in your production. Genau. Were there any influences, or how did you decide about the form, the final form?
I think we decided kind of about the form also during the process. It was kind of like from week to week, we kind of found out how to do it or how to deal with it. And it was very late that we kind of that we decided, or we made the decision that Amelia cannot come here. And then we had a lot of thinking, if we do the stage work, or if we have a like proper film concept, if we do like a proper film, or if we do it on stage and we create a stage work and then we film the stage work, make a documentation of it, which is maybe which still has like film elements, or using the potential of film. So now it's like this hybrid form that it is a documentation, but it's also like it's set on stage. And we had like Amelia on the screen. So we decided to have all the performers and the team in Hamburg and working on the stage like a normal theater piece. And then I think in the first rehearsal weeks, we kind of found out how to deal with it. Like it was really in the process. And then we decided not to have like a film team and to do like a proper film concept, but to make a theater piece, because we want to do a theater piece in the future. And then, but it was very interesting by having the audio files and the film of Amelia. Also Tian in the beginning did some video work. We found out that it's actually very interesting for the topic, because it's so much about the visual and about the gaze, that it's actually very interesting to have Ursina as a gaze during the piece, but also to have a person behind the camera filming it and also making this kind of a topic. So then it's like a lot of different gazes, and it's really very self-referential about the gaze. And that was very interesting. And also that the film also for Amelia, we found it very nice that there's a very big potential of inviting into an intimate space by the camera, and kind of combining videos which are shot at home and on this very aesthetic in this very aesthetic stage design. So there was something it's really due to the conditions, but somehow it turned out to be very fascinating. And yeah, I think, and of course there are a lot of references, and that the person who's filming is also part of the film. It was something which really interested us. And of course it's like it's an interesting thing, and it really fit very well. And there are all these references in film history, so we thought it's a good thing to do.
But can you explain a bit, perhaps, Amelia, also what kind of films did you send forth and back, and how did you approach slowly then to this final construction?
I sent a lot more film footage than ended up being in the film. I think if they had just played my film footage, the show would have been about 10 hours long. So it's probably a good thing they didn't do that. So it was really interesting for me, because obviously I was working in collaboration with all of these wonderful people, but I was also very often working by myself or with my wife, who was also my access worker for this project. And so what would happen, I think what started was they would send me an audio file that they had recorded, or give a kind of provocation, like a question or a task that was usually something pretty open, like describe what you look like, but do it based on how you feel. And that could mean anything. Or, think about how to play with light and dark but like you'd have on a stage, but how you can do that in your house. So the scene where I'm on the screen and you see me kind of going under my covers and out of my covers was based on that provocation. And then I would send them a film, we'd talk about it, we'd play with it, and then we kind of either I'd send it again, or I'd do something else, or they would do something else. And then that was very much the beginning of it. And then as the weeks kind of went on, we started to construct, and they knew what they wanted to do to kind of make the piece, and how it was going to start to feel and look and sound and all that kind of stuff. then it was a lot more really specific tasks. So we would give each other what we were calling scores. So your score is to do this number of things in this order, and then to film it. And it was all filmed on my phone. Some of the sound was recorded. I have a very fancy microphone, so some of the sound was recorded on the fancy microphone, but most of it was done on my iPhone, which I think is very of the time. And yeah, so that was, and then I would just upload the hours of stuff that I sent, and then poor Lisa and Caro would have to, like, after a very long rehearsal day, spend hours watching me. So you're welcome. But yeah, and then I think I dropped out of the session a couple weeks before they finished. So once they had more than enough film footage of me, they then went and finished constructing the show. So a lot of what was seen tonight was new to me as well, which was really interesting and very fun.
Yeah, somehow it was interesting that it was quite, like, I think we tried to have some Zoom rehearsals, like to really rehearse together and work together and kind of pretend to be in the same space. But of course, it was like the first experience for us as well, and it didn't really happen so often. So it was a bit hard to do it. We tried it a couple of times, but then there were so many technical issues as well, and so then we decided to have this, exchange. And in the end, so when we went on stage, we just had all the material. So we kind of created our material, which was also very often inspired by Amelia's material, and then we referred to Amelia's material. And then sometimes we chose to let it coexist, and to kind of, and then, I mean, in the beginning when we were on stage, we found out that it actually works quite well, that it gives, like, that it is a big contrast to this stage, but that it's of course also like a totally different bubble. It's like a totally different aesthetics and a totally different also physicality of just being in a private space and being in but it kind of, it came together very well, and also not, which is also good. Yeah, but maybe Lisa, you want to say something? I don't know.
No, you actually, you both were like describing it all in very, very precise and in a good way. And yeah, like as you said, Amelia, there's like tons of video material that will not disappear in the Nirvana space, because of course we plan also a version with Amelia appearing also with us and working with us for Rose La Rose. So it's not the end. So we're gonna work with it, and it's gonna stay present. And we're gonna, so everything that we did, and also that what has not been shown, will be used also when we then go together in the space and create the piece and another version of Rose again. So yeah, like the 10 hours of video material, they're all amazing. And so that just to really make it clear that it's one version, but that there's a lot of things still to continue to work on together.
Elisa, perhaps you can explain or go on, explain a little bit more in general terms about the subject, about the topic of the piece, this ambivalent figure of the showgirl. How was your research, and why is this figure so ambivalent?
Oh yeah, I mean, we went to a lot of archives actually from like all the different times, like the time was in general a big topic, and we went like through like these different figures of showgirls, but like also the negative and the positive aspects of this aspect, because like the showgirls in burlesque, there's like a lot of empowerment within the different numbers that showgirls were creating, like burlesque and stuff. Like there's like a lot of empowerment within how the showgirl was experimenting with exposing herself, and how it exposed herself, how it plays with the gaze, and how it was playing with the topic of seduction. But of course, like within this whole showgirl topic, there's also like the revue topic, the revue show dance that we went into, and where we also feel like there was a fascination, but also a kind of kind of like a negative side to it, like this, how the bodies get normed, how a norm of a certain type of woman is presented during the centuries. So it is a very ambivalent figure, and we really went into it. So we were like making audio description of all this archive material. Ursina too, like we all went into that. But we find out very, very soon that we want actually, it's a part of it that we can make, that we can bring into the rehearsal space, but we also very soon start to get away from it and start to distance from this revue and from this showgirl topic, and also like different sides of it, like, because it's not just the showgirl, it's of course like all kinds of different type of erotic bodies, or what is erotic dance, what is the look on a body, and the sections of how you actually present erotic throughout the times. But yeah, I'm sorry, I get lost in words. But yeah, it's yeah, that was one thing that was definitely fascinating for us. Yeah, maybe Carol can also join that. Yeah.
Would like to add something? Yeah.
I was just gonna. I'm so sorry. There's much interruptions from my cat and my wife trying to do a couple things to sort of help the technology. So if you see another human or a very fluffy creature pop in, I'm sorry, or you're welcome. Whichever.
No, it's not at all. No, but like Noodle, your cat, like, I mean, she loves to be a performer, you know, so
She
be a
is
part of it.
She is a showboat. Yeah.
Very welcome.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, but
somebody would like to add something about this research, about this ambivalent figure, and how the seduction is produced on stage, and how your own perception of yourself perhaps also on stage change, because you're all professional creators on stage. You want to be seen also on stage, and how did this research and process did influence your own perception of being on stage and producing for public?
I think it was, I mean, it's a very self-referential topic in itself, to kind of want to seduce on a stage, which is kind of in so many pieces it's a topic. So then to make it a topic, then you create, sometimes I have the feeling we create like anti-erotic bodies, you know, like, because you kind of went into this kind of refusal of it, or what does it mean when it's so much about like how do we shape the bodies. Then it was really about I don't know, we always, like in the beginning, but it's also because of these times, I think, and not having created so much before, and then everything changed like over and over again. And we kind of, in the beginning, we said like, okay, we try to be really unambitious and also kind of show unambitious bodies by not giving into this like being hyper productive with the bodies on stage. So there was something, and then yeah, and I think now it's like, and then we were very interested in the touch, because I mean, we could touch each other. So it was really about, we researched like for a longer period of like, okay, how do we touch each other? What does it mean? What do we reproduce by touching each other? What kind of relationships? And then, yeah, we got into this alien touch, we called it. And so there was really, and also to be, because also now after watching the piece again, it's like really sometimes about not being a showgirl, or not showing off so much, because I mean, like, obviously there were no people, so there was no audience, but then it was like, now it's very introvert sometimes, it's very what is it, introspective, but that was very somehow interesting for us. And it's also, of course, also the seduction is a very big topic in The Voice, but maybe Ursina wants to talk about it, because it's like, it's what was really interesting for us is like to have an audio describer on stage as another performer and performing this gaze, that it really brings the perception much more close to the bodies. And maybe it's like, I think something we were interested in was like to create another gaze, maybe to create like a more, I don't know, feminist gaze, or a more sympathetic gaze and to describe how a body feels and all of this, and to go like to really approach the bodies and touch them and talk about this and make it valuable also sometimes. Of like, I mean, there's some material, maybe it's not so interesting from a visual perspective, but when someone translates it, it gets like Ursina is a show master sometimes. She makes stuff more interesting than it seems. So this is, yeah, it's like the tease was a big topic, and in the beginning I think it's really about also about slowness, or like during the whole piece, and it's also about these, like, how does the visual come together with the auditory, with the voice, but also with the sound, and what does it create? I mean, it's still a research for us. We found some answers to it, but not so. I mean, there's still a big field of discovering.
Yeah, as a general, it's a very gentle and soft presentation, and I think that your voice, Ursina, is really constructing the space. Also, you're the voice of the piece. You describe and imagine also what happens on stage, and ask, for example, also the performers to do things again so that you can describe them again. So you leave actually this humble position of a describer and become by watching, describing, entering and manipulating the show, your position change completely, and you're using the audio description really as a artistic tool or element, which finally flips the relationship about the hierarchy of the describer and performance. And which gives completely also another look on the body, and also how about the means of choreography and how it is used. Perhaps you can explain in your own words what you do on stage.
Yeah, I mean, what I saw the film now for the first time, and I saw somehow the whole piece now from a certain distance now for the first time. So I'm still thinking and digesting what it is, what I did, and what happened, and so on. So because I can exactly remember from talking, and this is also a very beautiful thing about describing, that you remember so clearly what is happening in front of you, not so much what you see, but more what is happening. And I could exactly remember that, but now comparing it with the video, it was constant like, but this was not happening. I mean, it was something. Okay, I'm still digesting that while I'm talking here. And so my task was to use audio description as an artistic tool, and I'm still as we all do, probably wondering what that exactly means, because we had a lot of discussions and also feedback from people with visual impairments and blindness in Hamburg that gave us feedback during the rehearsal process. And we had discussions with them about what we're doing and what we try to achieve. And one thing I was constantly struggling with was the one task that audio description has or wants to offer as a kind of service, a service of translation, or maybe even a service of giving equal descriptions as a kind of proxy for what other people could probably see, or what is assumed to be seen, if it is seen anyways. But this is the idea behind it. And so there is the idea of service, and on the other hand, there is like a need of what is happening in the artistic space. And what I'm touched very much now at the moment about seeing the finished piece now was that it's also about the needs and the desires of my own body. So my body was sitting, watching, kind of, we said, okay, we start together, I sit here. So that was planned. And then I'm kind of drawn into the stage, and I want to go to see it from more close, or to understand what it's going. If I don't understand, I come closer. So I came closer. And then I was leaning against the wall because I was feeling a kind of trance state, whatever, with this music and lights and kind of overwhelming atmospheres happening on stage. So I constantly follow my own desires a bit. Of course, there's also a set path then in the end, but we set that really late in the process. So for a very long time, I was really like improvising and traveling through space, following these people, doing stuff, and they were following me and I was following them, and then I was like drawn into the television or into the screen with Amelia's performance there, and it was like this, like an overwhelming presence of different things existing next to each other. And I tried to handle this with a describing voice. So and I tried also not to only handle this with words, but maybe with also like a tone in my voice or in the transformation of my voice to not only give descriptions, but also give impressions of what is happening inside of, or allow this to be more there, that there are like transformations in my voice and I react on this like this. I give resonance with my body and also with my voice. Yeah, so this was my first reaction maybe to this video now. Yeah.
Yeah, there's of course also a strong difference between being in the space itself and watching the video, but I think the video makes it very close also. I think it's very well translated. But when I was in the space last week or the week, I really had the impression that everything was based on a very nice and smoothly consent. Also, it is also in a visually translated into this very nice pastel colored environment. No? But I really had also the impression that it was really striking to me that I really had the impression that it was not one who would do the choreography for everybody, but that it was a constant dialogue between yourself. And so you improvise, I think, your audio description. And but what I wanted to know also is, are the movements also improvised, or how much freedom do you have on stage to react on each other, also in this philosophy of being open with each other?
There was a lot of openness. So we also improvised for a very long time, and in the end we fixed some stuff, but it was also always the discussion. I mean, by having, like, we didn't do this before, so we didn't know, should we do like a piece before and then discuss the audio description and how, and then there was a big discussion like all the time with Ursina to not make a difference and to not make this, okay, this is the visual and now we describe it, and it was not like that in a very, like in a lot of rehearsals. It was really like, so the improvisation mode always came back, because when Ursina describes us doing something, we get in contact with her, and then it's like, it's a circle kind of, so it's like we give each other feedback all the time. And this was it was very interesting, but it was also very important in the process, I think, and it was like the right way to do it, kind of, by not fixing something or choreographing it very set and then find words for it. But so sometimes, so that's, yeah, Ursina, I think she played a big role in choreographing also the material, by kind of, because she sometimes with her audio description, she manifested things which we could then recognize and then reproduce or reconstruct. So it was like, and also, and it's a very fragile, I think it's a very fragile mode, which I love. Mm-hmm. It's really like, so it kind of, by having it not set exactly, it's like in every time we did it, it was so different, because sometimes we were tired, and then Ursina was sometimes tired, and then sometimes, I don't know, something didn't work, and then it was a confusion. And then it's also why, like, by being in the performance, and then sometimes listening to Ursina, of course, like you get an image of what you do, or an understanding, and so it's like totally based on a dialogue, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's also maybe one of the reason why there's also like there's slowness, or there's time, like that we take time because we listen to Ursina and she's listening back. So this topic of slowness, or of taking time, how the body is built or how we shape, it's like also the whole beginning part. It's because also this listening and this interaction. That's why we don't go over it. We are not like just producing and going into a hyper quick mode. It's really about a sensibility for that. But it's also like very, of course, vulnerable in a way to, because it's so in the moment in a way. Yeah.
I was going to say, because Ursina's Ursina's work was the stuff that I heard the least in the processing of it, because that's just the way it happened. So and watching it now, there was something that I think, Lisa, you just said the word that I've been kind of chewing around but hadn't thought of, which is that to hear an audio describer in a kind of, I use air quotes, traditional audio description role be vulnerable is not something I think I've ever heard before. And I find that really exciting, because there's this sort of norm of confidence, and this is the way things look that audio description relies on. In some spaces it really needs. So it's not to say that that's a bad thing, but in this type of form where everything about form is being played with, to let the audio describer be vulnerable, whether that's because they lost their shoe or because they got touched and they didn't know that they were going to get touched, and that meant that they lost their words, like that stuff really stuck out to me in a way, because I understood what was happening enough visually but I also could connect to the audio describer in a way that I don't think I ever have before. So like, that's just me as a blind audience member just going, oh my goodness, that's amazing. So yeah, just to throw that out there, I think the word is vulnerable, and that made it just really beautiful and something I don't think I've ever heard before.
Thank you. It speaks so much to my heart, because it also feels vulnerable, but it feels also that there's such huge potential in these moments of when you don't talk so much, but you just try to experience or be in the moment, to have something to talk from, So there's also these time frames or sequences of time that needs to happen before you start talking, and all these processes. I had the feeling that the process was generous enough to let me have these processes going on, and maybe that's also what you include in saying it was vulnerable. But yeah, I agree totally.
Yeah, I'd like to open the discussion now also to our Zoom participants and YouTube and Facebook. We have a first comment here that I'll will read you in German and then try to translate, which is a comment first. Hallo alle, erstmal mag ich euch meine Freude aussprechen, euch gestern gesehen zu haben, umso mehr ich euch zugeschaut habe, und auch durch die Stimme der Beschreibung wurden eure Körper zu einem Körper. Alle waren eben ganz präsent, kein Körper wirkte fehl am Platz. Es war nicht mehr wichtig, wie der Körper visuell wirkt, sondern für mich war es wie, wenn sich die Körper auflösen in etwas ganz Organisches. Oh Gott, jetzt geht es hier weiter. Es gibt eine Beschreibung. So basically, she said that that she was very happy to see you, and the more and more she watched the video, the bodies became one and very present, and nobody were fehl am Platz, were. Can somebody help me? It was not important anymore how the body felt visually, but it became something very organic. and also the voice. And wie seht ihr die Gefahr, dass die Audiodeskription zu einer Audiointerpretation wird, die uns ZuschauerInnen zu stark beeinflusst und uns den eigenen Blick nimmt? Do you see that the danger that the audio description will be an audio interpretation, so that the audience members are getting influenced by that gaze?
So.
Yeah, maybe I could start. So first of all, I don't see a danger at all in any kind of visually presented things, but what I think is like interpretations are like always made for you, or decisions are made for you, like from the artist side all the time, completely all the time. And it's funny that if you describe it, then you make something more explicit maybe. And then all of a sudden, like as an audience member, if you watch or if you listen or whatever you do combined, you understand that, okay, now a decision is made, whatever that means. And maybe before, without the description, you wouldn't have noticed that there is a decision made for you, because a light change is also like a decision for you to see or not to see. Or if the music gets louder, then it's also like the musician made a decision to make you not understand anymore what is said on stage. So all these decisions are like in this piece very transparent, I think. And I think I refer then to Carolin, what she was saying about maybe the female gaze in this piece, which is very important for me, because I think exactly this is the female gaze, like not only giving interpretations, but also like making transparent where these interpretations come from. And then this way, making transparent and putting down the hierarchy of who decides what. And then you, as an audience, you can also decide to look away or to close your eyes or to hold your ears or whatever you want to do or however you want to react. And I think this transparency creates an empowerment for an audience to be aware, to become aware of what kind of decisions you make as an audience member. And I think this is also something that I felt for the first time. And of course, it still maybe needs to be could be more developed. But I think it's a very new thing for me to happen on stage. I just have to say. Yeah, maybe that's an answer to your question.
Can I also just throw out there that I think it's really important to acknowledge that vision, the act of seeing something, is subjective. So when you look at something as an art piece or as, I don't know, something completely mundane, your life, the culture you come from, the languages you speak will tell you how to process what you are looking at. And whether or not it's conscious, that's a decision you're making. So it is problematic to me that audio description tries to remove that for people, because anyone who does describing, it doesn't matter how neutral they're trying to be, they have an opinion, they have a perspective, and their perspective is their own. So, and so that's also just another thing to bear in mind, that just because audio is being laid on top of visual stuff, if it wasn't there, there would still be choices made by audience members that are their own choices. And that's the beauty of art. So, that's not a bad thing at all. It's not a danger, or if it is, it's a danger I like. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also a question of how you actually make it clear at the beginning, when Ursina was describing what her voice will be during the piece. So like really making it hearable, that the voice will have certain tasks and that the voice will be describing, but it will also like, so at the beginning it was really like also like a kind of announcement of where the voice will travel to. So it's a bit like, I think that was also very important to make it clear that the voice itself will be also a piece and will be in a piece, and that will also be a piece of seduction, a piece of playing with the topic of how the voice will go in through sentences and will also seduce the audience in different ways. I think it's very a question also of how transparent you make the process and what happens during the piece, and how you communicate it to the audience at the very beginning. So I thought that was very important also from Ursina's side, that she said it, what she will go through many ways and many phases. But of course, yeah, it's so. Yeah. So maybe there's another chat. I mean, there's
some chat going on here. I'd like to also invite warmly those who follow us on YouTube or Facebook to write us the WhatsApp or a text message. Should I say the number again? So it's 0049, it's like in TV, 0049 177 690 4295. But I'd like also just to add also that this subjectivity, you mentioned all of you and especially Amelia, I think it empowers also a lot the audience members who see it or who watch it or who experience the show, because very often in my experience also people are sometimes not really sure what they have been experiencing and what narrative had been communicating or what kind of message. And I always tell them to try to describe what they have watched or seen. And so I think it's very empowering also the audio description for people who can experience this. Here there's a comment, for me the voice was here, but it was not the important thing because the voice don't describe a story. So perhaps this is a comment. Genau. As long as we are waiting for other questions, I'd like to come back also to the gaze, back to the gaze of your male dancer in the piece. Tian Rutteville, who is a performer from Berlin, and why did you choose to work with a male dancer, and do you know how his gaze changed throughout the process?
Yeah, basically it was not a decision for a male performer. It was a decision because I met Tian during a rehearsal process for another piece, and he was working a lot. He was composing an opera for us, and the way he was talking, and we were experimenting together. The rehearsals it was a very nice getting to know each other, and I felt like the way our bodies were in space was very comfortable and very nice, and he created a very nice space for experimenting with the voice and with talking and with singing. So I thought like it's worth really a try to bring him in, and I also thought it would be a good match with every one of us. So yeah, and then I think it was interesting because in a way also, especially with the topic of touch, we were really talking a lot about this, how the topic of touch is actually so much, how it's hard for me sometimes to speak in English, but it's always in a way in a sexual relationship, like touch and sexuality, and how we also can actually distance the touch from this whole perception of a touch related to an erotic sexual interpretation, and finding this and taking away this hierarchy of body parts that are touched and revisiting the topic of touching. So that was I think that he brought in a very interesting way. But I don't really want to speak for him now because he's not here. So I can only say from the experience in the rehearsal space that it was a lot about also creating, like he he was creating a lot of audio descriptions. He was creating a lot of very nice darkness scores for the darkness where we were moving to. And it was in a way very nice how the concept of gender through all of our bodies was actually more and more become, I have to say, like the topic of the fluidity of how we talk about our genders and how we make it a topic or not, or let it disappear and disappeared into fragments of our bodies. It was really nice. So he really brought also a big piece of that into the space. So yeah, that's just what I can say from my experience, how his voice had been heard and how he used his voice and his artistic views. And also he comes from a singing perspective, so like it was really nice. We were like did a lot of singing, so it was a very, very nice sensual way of working together and listening. Yeah, that's from my side, but I don't want to speak a lot for him now because he's not here, but he sends nice greetings.
I said that the discussion will be ending in 45 minutes. We should slowly find an ending. There's a comment for the end by, I think, Sophia Neises here in the chat. I will read it in German. Der Gedanke, wer beschreibt, ist für mich als queere, sehbehinderte Zuschauerin so unglaublich wichtig. Sie hat so viel mit Macht und Repräsentation zu tun. Ich konnte mich vollkommen auf Unsinn verlassen und mich ihr anvertrauen und habe mich ihr in die Performance eingeladen gefühlt. So,
ich habe damit meint sie Ursina und nicht Unsinn, oder?
Ursina, ja, auf Ursina, Entschuldigung, jetzt habe ich genau das, genau, pardon. Who is describing, for the person who writes here in the chat, Sophia Neises, who's a queer and blind person, it is really important who is describing, because it has a lot to do with power and representation. And she could completely listen to Ursina and trust her. And she had the feeling to be very invited by her to the performance. So
I agree.
Nice, thank you so much, Sophia.
Yeah, that's really nice, because it was also, I have to say, it was an intense job, and I mean, we all have so much appreciation. I don't want to take now the words of you, Ursina, because I think it's also important for you to say something to that, but it's really an amazing job and a very intense job, like more than 1 hour to improv and to work in that and really be into the space. So yeah, like there's a lot of it's very intense, and like there's a lot of deep appreciation for your voice. So thank you.
Yes.
Okay, with these gentle words, I would like to end this discussion. I thank you very much to all audience members who followed us on the different platforms, and to you guys. Thank you so much for this beautiful piece and this discussion. And I hope to see you soon all together. And I hope that a live performance will be possible in a very short time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you too. Thank you too. Thank you to Kampnagel also for supporting this process. Thank you a lot to all of you.
Bye-bye.